All right, you guys, it's been a while since we've had a new document in the Idaho v. Kohberger case, but we've got one. Let's go over it.
Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You knew that was false. For anybody who had never heard that before, that question is now planted into them. Unqualified representation that Mr. Kohberger stalked one of the witnesses, and that's false. We do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area. There are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants.
Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only, and just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Again, it's been a while, like a month and a half, maybe 2 months, since we actually got a document from the court when it comes to this case, because they're playing all kinds of games when it comes to unsealing the documents. It's taking forever for the state and the defense to either get back to the court, for the judge to finally release stuff. The last time they actually released a bunch of documents, as most of you guys know, they ended up having to immediately remove them because they had people's social security numbers in the documents. None of the court-ordered redactions were actually done. And then what happened the next time we got a drop of information from a different entity from the Idaho State Police? There were photographs that were not redacted the way they were supposed to be, and those also got removed. Both entities, both separate departments screwed up, which is not surprising. Some people think it might be intentional because there is a lot of information that is still being kept very secretive. There's a lot of questions still going on, but I don't know if it's intentional or not. No one's been found to have been fired or had to resign or anything like that. But then again, they've been secretive with literally everything, and we are still waiting to hear something about the leak investigation when it comes to the Dateline episode and all of that boo-boo that ended up happening. We're not hearing crap. So let's just go ahead and go over this document and see what they're going to end up doing with the FBI information in this case. I could rant and rant and rant about that until I am blue in the face, but let's just go ahead and get this document over with first. Now, this was filed on 3/12. I am recording this on 3/13. The judge himself has placed some sort of order when it comes to the FBI documents. Order on state's motion to reconsider unsealing of certain records. Now, when we saw that actually being filed, it was back at the beginning of January. This is the only piece of information that we got from that, because whatever the state sent in to argue this was also sealed. Go figure. It starts, before the court is the state's motion to reconsider the unsealing of certain documents relating to Federal Bureau of Investigation records, the FBI records. Specifically, the state requests that the court redact from court records the FBI agents' identities and contact information on grounds that the information is confidential and exempted from disclosure pursuant to Exemptions 6 and 7C of the Freedom of Information Act. Now, my problem with that is that we pretty much already know the majority of the FBI agents that were working on this case, at least the ones that we know, were going to be up front and center when it came to documents that were already released, information that was going to come out in court, people that were supposed to get on the stand and testify. We've also had an FBI agent, I believe his last name is Easter. Like, is it Michael Easter? That name could be wrong. I think that's it. But he also went around at the beginning or middle-ish of 2025 claiming that in January of 2025, he was actually reached out to by the FBI agents that were looking into certain portions of this case. And he went on podcasts mentioning things about car information and cell phone information, which is super interesting considering the fact that the state now is telling us that they really have none of that points to anything. But let's continue. The state has identified 11 records containing this information, 6 of which have already been unsealed in part or in full and made public, and 5 of which are pending partial unsealing. The court agrees that absent a showing that the public interest in disclosure outweighs privacy concerns, Exemptions 6 and 7C of FOIA protect against the disclosure of the identities of federal employees involved in law enforcement. And then it cites Baker versus the FBI from 2017. Exemption 6 precluded disclosure non-disclosure of the names of FBI agents involved in a criminal investigation, absent showing that the public interest in disclosure of the records outweighed privacy concerns. Then they speak of Powell versus the United States Department of Justice from 1984, finding FBI agents have significant privacy interest under exemption 7C of FOIA in the non-disclosure of their names, since disclosure of identities could conceivably subject them to annoyance or harassment or even physical danger in either official or private lives. Now they're citing Sandoval versus the United States Department of Justice from 2017 again, finding names of FBI agents properly withheld under exemption 7C of FOIA. Typically, the only time the public interest outweighs the privacy interest is when the FBI is accused of wrongdoing or other misconduct. And they're citing Safeguard Services versus the SEC Department from 1991, holding categorically that unless the names of federal employees appearing in law enforcement files are necessary to confirm or refute compelling evidence that the agency is engaged in illegal activity, the information is exempt from disclosure under exemption 7C. This is where it's complete and utter bullshit, and we know that because the same court, the exact same judge, Hippler, that is sitting here signing this, has already admitted to us in a live hearing that was literally on live national TV for the world to hear that the Department of Justice rules when it comes to the IGG, the genealogy investigation, were indeed broken, but that it was constitutionally unimportant. So yes, the FBI already has been proven to have done something wrong. So this entire thing right here is bullshit. It says, here, there is no accusation that the FBI engaged in wrongdoing, and therefore no basis to find that the public interest outweighs the FBI agent's privacy interest. Bullshit. Thus, had the state objected to the revealing of FBI agents' names and contact information when provided the opportunity, the court would have agreed to redact that information pursuant to ICAR 32G1, which exempts from disclosure records to which access is restricted by federal law. The problem is that 6 of the documents identified by the state are already in the public realm. Taking remedial measures at this point would be futile. Thus, the state's motion to reconsider is untimely as to these documents and therefore denied. As to the 5 documents which have not been released to the public, the court grants the state's motion and will ensure this information is redacted as requested by the state. And then they have the footnote that shows Exhibit S2 from February 9th, 2026, which, as you can see, we don't even have a spot for when it comes to the actual case of interest website. But let's go ahead and check the case summary. No, there's nothing at all for February even in here. So not only is it sealed, something that we can't see at all, but they're not even letting us know it's part of the case file when it comes to the case summary itself. Okay. So this seems like some documents that were already out there and to the public. The state was asking for those documents to be removed and then put back out there with redactions, which is absolutely pathetically stupid and a waste of time and taxpayer money for all of those things that would have needed to happen for that to happen, because those documents are out there. They're out there on people's Google Drives. They're out there on Reddit. They're out there in screenshots. They're out there on all these different forums. They're out there on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok. They're out there. What would be the point in that? That's absolutely stupid. Why would they even ask for that to happen? That is such a redundant situation when it comes to the state's request. That portion is being granted. And if they already wanted the old files basically removed, redacted, and then placed back out there in whatever way they wanted it, what does that truly mean for the rest of the documentation we're waiting on? Why does it matter? Because the FBI did everything in this case. The FBI did the IGG. The FBI did the phone information. The FBI did the car information. The FBI orchestrated the arrest. The FBI followed them all over the place. The FBI, the FBI, the freaking BI. That's why it matters. So I guess we just have to sit back and see what happens. I just don't understand why they're not releasing things the way they're supposed to be releasing things, unless it's being done on purpose because of the WSU lawsuit. That's really the only thing I can think of for the holdup. I don't even know anymore. We're just going along for the ride and trying to find out what's actually happening here. But let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments. Hey, you guys, I'm going to be putting the video I put together about the trip I took with the boys for Valentine's Day to the Mustard Jam show. So I'll have a link for that down in the description box. It'll be over there on my second channel. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out, subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already, and please don't forget to make sure that the notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.